The Street Philosopher is a historical novel. It's set in the 1850s and it has two chronological strands to the narrative, one of which is set during the Crimean War of 1854-6 and the other is set in Manchester in 1857. Manchester in the summer of 1857 was the focus of Britain's attentions because a huge art exhibition, the Art Treasures exhibition, was held on the outskirts of the city, and thousands of people who would never normally go to Manchester flocked to the city in order to visit this site. There's a seemingly random act of street violence in which this street philosopher becomes embroiled that makes him realise that his past is returning to haunt him, and that old friends and enemies alike are gathering in Manchester, and that old Crimean scores are about to be settled. My initial inspiration came when I was working on my PhD, and I was researching the Art Treasures exhibition as a part of a general thesis about the origin of public art exhibition in Britain, the origins of it and the way in which it developed. And when I was working on my thesis, I talked to my father about all these wonderful, complicated academic theories that I was devising, and he would ask me jokingly when I was going to put a plot in the thesis, basically I think to make it of interest to some kind of wider audience. And you know, this was a joke, obviously, but it struck a chord in me when I was slaving away in the British Library and what have you. And I started to realise, I started to look at the response I was having to all of these Victorian documents I was reading, all of these newspapers, all of these engravings and photographs I was looking at. And I was being inspired by them, I realised, in a way that I couldn't express through my academic work. And I realised that he was right. And then he died shortly after I finished my thesis. And one of the results of this, but it made me think very hard about what I was doing and where I was going. And instead of taking the normal path when you finish a PhD, which is to try and find an academic post, I sort of wandered around for a bit thinking about writing and gradually becoming more and more convinced that this is what I had to do, and gradually coming to concentrate and focus on it. And the Street Philosopher kind of came out of that. There were a couple of sort of stalled attempts before I really got into the stride of it. There were a couple of failed attempts to get the book going. And there was even a complete novel that I wrote as I was finishing my PhD that just really went nowhere. But I think this is a common situation. And now looking back on it, I view it as a kind of apprenticeship.